Good afternoon, everyone. And are we good to start? So one of the things we like to do is just pick on people in the audience, also ask questions. So I hope you all pay attention and, keep a little bit of an eye. We're all very excited about ESG, of course, sanctions. So a bit about our panel. Our topic is up here. Legal risk in an era of sanctions, ESG mandates and regulations. So first of all of you are in shipping. Have any of you faced any sanctions issues? Hands up if any of you have. Okay, just 5 of you. So that's not too bad. But regulatory changes impacted anybody? Yes, of course. Who likes lawyers? Okay, so I just thought we'd start. I know we're not very loved. I know we're loss leaders in most of our companies, but believe me, we are the most important people. So let me introduce you to who's important in their companies. My really, really interesting panel. Let me start with Chetan Sharma. Chetan, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us who we are. You are.
Thank you, Monica. Very good afternoon to you and my fellow panelists and the distinguished guests. So I'm Chetan Sharma. I'm legal counsel with PSA India. I started my career as an active litigator in Delhi. And after a few years, I moved to Kuwait, where I was heading a foreign division of a law firm. And thereafter, I finally came back to the home country. I'm now with PSA for 2.5 years. I manage the corporate, commercial, and transactional practices for PSA entities in India.
Thank you very much. Captain Deepak Manchu, do you want to introduce yourself and your company?
Hi Monica, thank you very much. So this is Captain Deepak Mantoju, and I was a seafarer before. I have worked on board for almost 14 years, and I've quit sailing around 1.5 years back and have joined Navigator Consultants. We are basically dealing with the flag states. We align with flag states. We are deputy registrars, legal registrars for the flags. And we assist our owners and managers to register their vessels and maintain compliance as per the flag standards. Apart from that, we are also into offshore engineering. We provide complete offshore solutions, detailed engineering, and ship design as well. We are into inspections as well. So we have a lot of different verticals. If I keep talking, it will be 40 minutes will be over. So anyhow, that was a brief about my company. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak. So the more you do, the more regulations impact you. So that's what we expect from you. And we also hear from Kate, who spent a lot of time preparing for this panel because she's known for weeks. Kate, you want to introduce yourself?
What Monica means is that I joined about 2 hours ago, so I'm very happy to be here. My name's Kate Baddeley. I'm a partner at Preston Turnbull. We're a London-based shipping specialist law firm. We do all sorts of litigation, but I happen to head up the sanctions team, so it was a fortuitous gap in the lineup. So a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Kate. And last, but definitely not least, the person who's traveled the longest distance to be here with all of us today. Amsha, you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Monica. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amsha Gengan, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't say where I come from, because even Sanjam has mentioned that on my bio, that I'm coming here with all my African experience. So I'm a South African-based advocate, and my experience does lie from Cape to Cairo. I love to be at Maritime SheEO. This is my 3rd one in person. Mumbai is always on my diary every November. Well, this year, October. It's good to be here and on this panel.
Thank you very much, Amsha. Yeah, it's great to be here, and what a wonderful job Sanjam has done again with Maritime SheEO and now LegalCon or AnchorCon that we're in today. Hopefully an annual event. We're talking sanctions, but I thought rather than jump in, let's go back a bit and talk about what are sanctions exactly and how do they impact India. Based in the UK, we hear about EU sanctions, US sanctions, but how does it impact India? And to give us a bit of an insight, Chetan, can I ask you to start with that?
Sure. Thank you, Monica. So, before we even move to sanctions from an Indian context, as we saw, I think just maybe a 3 or couple of hands up there when Monica asked the question regarding sanctions, and I saw some of them were not Indians, it seems. It's not a very common practice, it's not a very common topic which we discuss in India. And not all the law firms, in fact, even the top tier ones have a dedicated sanctions practice. So it's very important for us to start with understanding what are sanctions. To put it very simply, sanctions are primarily restrictions or legal restrictions put in by international bodies and countries such as the US, the UN, EU, UK, on various other countries, entities and individuals to punish or pressurize them to follow international norms. I think this is very simply put. So that's what the sanctions is. Well, does India follow a sanctions regime, an autonomous sanctions regime like the other nations? No. India doesn't follow any direct and autonomous sanctions regime. However, we do follow UN Security Council's sanctions, and also occasionally some of the sanctions are directed precisely on economic or diplomatic front. As you would know, there was earlier this year an unfortunate incident of a terror attack in Pahalgam, and thereafter India imposed unilateral sanctions on Pakistan, not just on goods originating from Pakistan, but all kind of imports, exports. Vessels, Pakistan flagged vessels were not allowed entry. Even till date, they are not allowed entry to any of the Indian ports. So these are the restrictions which India do put in place, along with, say, following RBI circulars or DGFT or customs sanctions. Now, when we talk about sanctions, and as it's not a very common topic, what are the best practices we do follow? So I come from PSA, which is a terminal service operator, and we do have a very dedicated compliance and sanctions team globally. And now what we do is, I think the first step in sanctions and compliance is to do proper KYC, due diligence. So whether you're onboarding your customers, whether they're suppliers, whether they're vendors, you need to have extensive KYC forms in place. Then there has to be a process internally of how those KYC forms can be, and their answers can be interpreted. So we have a checkbox list which all the say the people who are working on KYC forms, they have to tick, and if there is any answer in affirmative, they have to reach out to the concerned legal counsel. So that's the first step. Then there are trainings which help, not just say, and when sanctions, it's not just legal or compliance, it's operations, it's IT, it's your sales, it's your commercial team, procurement team. Everyone has to be involved in that. They need to be trained on that. Thereafter, you need to have your proper, say, contractual safeguards in place, like the reps and warranties, where you're taking the reps and warranties from your customers, because us being a terminal service provider, we never really know what kind of, say, cargo or the good is in the container. So, it comes to us, and then, maybe the customs will scan it, but to ensure that, there are no sanctioned goods there, the origin of the goods is not from a sanctioned country, we need to ensure that we take all those reps and warranties in the contract. So that's another thing which we do, and most of the, I think, the similar operations they do in India. At the same time, I think it's also important to follow, the international sanctions regime, and you can't do it by sitting in India easily. So you need to be in touch with your external counsels. You need to follow the RBI, DGFT circulars, and yes, I mean, that's how things evolve. They evolve like this in the sanctions practice.
That's great to know. I think best practices, that's very relevant, but also updating it all the time, because sanctions lists come out pretty much suddenly and mostly on a Friday afternoon. So, making sure that on Monday you're still up to date is quite, I think, a challenge.
Absolutely.
I think at GUARD also we have a dedicated sanctions team, and we're just inundating them. So sanctions lawyers, you'll never be out of a job in the near future. So thank you, that was very, very interesting, and I'm sure DP World, everyone's following a similar kind of regime, because you can't survive otherwise. You can't make payments, you can't receive payments, and that's the main thing. That's what it's all about, right?
And Monica, I think one of the points that Chetan makes is that to know your customer and to be compliant with sanctions and understanding your legal risk is actually a leverage today. It's a competitive advantage. The companies that get it right and that continue to innovate and be agile, if the list comes out on a Friday and if your sanctions team is ready on a Monday, that's your competitive advantage. So I think it's really an opportunity to know your sanctions regulations and your customer.
Yeah, no, that's fun. Thank you, Amsha. That's very good. So you have the practices, and then you have the agility to keep evolving.
Yeah. And also the record keeping. This is also a very important aspect. You need to at least have all the records, KYCs updated at least in 1 or 2 years to ensure that the answers you have are the updated ones, and you keep those records for at least 5 years for any kind of internal or external audits.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. Deepak?
Yeah, so one more thing I'd like to add here is, though KYC, we do KYCs for all our customers, but what generally is happening nowadays, the regulations are changing so fast, especially when it comes to sanctions. You load a cargo and you are underway, right? Before you reach your destination port, there is a fresh sanction list. And now you have cargo on board and you are one of your vendors or someone down the line is somehow related to sanctions, and now you are in a soup, right? How you discharge your cargo. So maintaining just doing the KYC at the initial point is not enough now anymore. You have to be updating yourself almost on a daily basis, and then you record yourself that what you did, so that when there is a soup like this and you are in the middle of it, then you have a proof, you have a trail of documentation stating that you did your due diligence. Now it's not the time anymore where you say that I didn't knew. It was a time where it was very simple. Then like, I am the owner and I don't know what has happened. Charters failed, or there was something down the sanctions line. But owners very simply could say that I didn't knew. But right now it's not like that. You have to have a very proactive approach, or else it's a big problematic. There was a similar case where my firm handled the case. We had a vessel, MR tanker, loaded, destined to discharge in an EU port, and when they reached there, nobody knew that they are now associated with sanctions. The port has rejected entry, and vessel was standing at anchorage, loaded condition, over 2 million spent on damages and all, and then somehow our firm assisted them to clear some part of it, but still unable to discharge the cargo, wasted money and time and resources.
No, it's really fast moving, and like you said, mid-ocean, if you get a sanction, what can you do? So yeah, like I said, lawyers, you all have a job, so don't worry about it. So Deepak, since you've taken us to the next stage, you're working in regulatory flux, you're working with policy uncertainty. How do you stay agile, and how do you stay ahead of all of this? Tell us from your experience.
Thank you for the question again, Monica. So, when it comes to regulations and all, I believe that the maritime industry right now is navigating what I call a perfect storm of regulations. It can be environmental, technical, social. The regulations are changing way too faster. Because let's face it, we started shipping, shipping came into full force in, let's say, maybe last 50 years or so, not before that. So we started whatever we knew, emission, we didn't care about emission, garbage pollution, throwing garbage out at sea, all was a very common practice. And now we are facing the repercussions of what we did earlier, right? So now all of a sudden we are aware what has happened. We have what damage we have already done. And that is the primary reason why we have so many regulations coming in at the same time. Because now everybody knows what is happening. There is garbage all over floating around the sea. There is oil pollution, oil spills. And so all the regulations are hitting it at the same time. But yeah, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But the pace is there from IMO's carbon emission and EU's emission schemes to India's own ship recycling and crew welfare agendas. So the regulations are changing drastically when we see the last 5 years or so. But yeah, it has to happen. It had to happen. Now is the time that is happening because of the past experience, what we have done. So for the legal teams and for the board, the biggest challenge that they face is agility. Because as I said, the regulations are changing so fast, you have to keep a track of the regulations. At the same time, making sure that your commercial operation is viable and also commercially profitable, or else what's the use of all this? So to keep that balance, the compliance and the commercial part of it, your team, your legal team and the board has to be agile. So there is...
So always reading, always on top, always awake.
Yeah, of course. You have to be on top, right? Or else if you miss an update, then of course it's a risk. It's a loss that you have to wait.
Absolutely. And of course you're very young, so your mode of communication is like so much faster, right? There's Twitter, there's WhatsApp, there's all.
Absolutely.
I mean, talk to Captain Bhasin over there. When he was younger, not that you're old, Captain Bhasin, but when you were younger, it was only fax and telex. So whole day you could party, and morning you get your information. Today, every minute kind of we are working. Not that you're old, Captain Bhasin, but you're older than some of us on the panel. Sorry, I think the point to bring across is how fast information is coming and how different it is to even 5 years ago, I would say, especially with sanctions. Sorry, I interrupted you, Captain. Any more you want to say?
So to have this agility, I believe the main thing what you need is collaboration.
Yeah.
Collaboration with your legal team, with your commercial, with technical, and the mindset, the culture. I'll give you an example of my own firm. When last year, I guess, when the sanctions were just starting out, so we had a very basic, we have clients all over the globe, so we invoice them, we send them money, they send us money, there is a lot of things going on. So yeah, it's all of money, of course, or else why are we sitting here, right? Yeah. So we had a very basic principle. You get the details of the invoices, you make the invoices, you send, you get the money, end of story. And then when sanctions hit, and we had to do, as Chetan before pointed out, we had to do a lot of KYC. You have to be very careful from where the money is getting to you, where you are sending the money. So all of a sudden, we had all these forms. You have to do the due diligence. You are going to sea searcher, blah, 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 whatever you have the platforms. And all of a sudden, our team were loaded with all this extra work that has come their way, where it was very simpler initially. And now it's like 10 minutes job has got to 1 hour. So initially it was difficult. Our teams were like, what's going on? So, but it is a mandate. If we don't do this, we don't have a business tomorrow. So we started doing that, and right now the culture is like that. It has embedded into our system. We get, even though it's an Indian customer, we know sanctions are not applicable, US sanctions, not applicable in India, but still, now the process has so much been embedded into our system, we go automatically and we do those checks, which are, necessary to be compliant. So the mindset of the people is very important, where they see these regulations not as an hurdle, they see this as an opportunity to grow, or opportunity to do a better job what you were doing earlier. So that's what, you have to think it not as a hurdle, as a navigational chart. As I'm a seafarer, I'll quote that. As a chart, it is there, you just have to follow it, and you will be ready for the next transformation.
Yeah, and you have to keep evolving. Thank you. Yeah, I completely understand.
I just
Tell
need
me,
to
Chetan.
add a very important point by Captain Deepak over here. What we have done internally is that we've prepared a checklist. So, it's, as he mentioned, it was very difficult in the beginning how, to navigate, how to find out. But to simply answer or to some of the important questions over here are, who is the customer? Where does the goods originate from? What's the payment mechanism involved, the currencies? Who is the end customer? End customer is also very important. Which kind of services they're offering. So all of these are not just important from the goods perspective, but from, say, coming from one terminal to another terminal, and then the vessels in between, and there's a complex web. So some of these questions really simplify the procedure.
So the exposure aspect also, not just, yeah. That's perfect. So now we've come from the client side to the legal side, if I may, in that sense. So Kate, you've been working with sanctions for a very long time. And of course, in the UK, we have a much bigger web in a way, UK, US, EU, and where we fall in the middle. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about the main legal risks arising from sanctions facing the shipping industry per se, and what have you seen in your experience?
Yes, certainly. So I think there are sort of three main legal risks that I see clients facing kind of on a daily basis. So the first is that their actions are actually going to be in breach of sanctions. Sorry, can you hear me okay? Yeah. The first is that their actions are actually in breach of sanctions, which itself is going to come with ramifications, fines, potential criminal offences, etc. The second is that you can become a sanctions target. That might be as a result of having breached sanctions, but also that can happen without you actually having undertaken any unlawful activity. So you see that particularly in the US context with their SDN listings. You may not be a US entity, you may not have operated in the US at all, but if they think your activity is detrimental to their sanctions policy, you might find yourself a target anyway. And thirdly, there's the contractual risk. And I thought to sort of best illustrate this, we could look at a sort of cautionary tale or a horror story, depending how you see it, which is a current case that I'm involved in for a client. So the clients are Turkish owners. They own a vessel that has been involved since the new year in shipping Russian oil. So this is lawful Russian oil trade. They have been complying with the oil price cap attestation requirements and shipping from Russia to third countries. Nevertheless, in June, their vessel was sanctioned by the EU, and then in October of this year, it was sanctioned by the UK. And the designation criteria is really wide. So in the UK, it's simply the fact that you are operating in the Russian oil sector is enough for your vessel to be designated. So we're engaging with the authorities on the client's behalf, but it's quite hard because they clearly have been engaging with the Russian oil industry, but we are trying to put forward the case that they've done so in a lawful manner. And in that regard, they did due diligence for all their trades. They took external legal advice and checked their counterparties. They took attestations. And the irony is that for one of the trades, they were not satisfied from a due diligence perspective, and they didn't actually go ahead with the lifting. As a consequence, the charterers lost the subcharter. The vessel, they got a mitigation fixture, and they proceeded to India, where the charterers promptly arrested the vessel and terminated the charter. That was in June, and the vessel is still arrested. So the clients, firstly, they haven't undertaken any unlawful activity from our assessment, and yet not only have they become subject to sanctions, they're also facing litigation for having tried to comply with the sanction legislation. So that is kind of the worst case scenario for clients.
It is very challenging because, like you said, and I think all three of you are bringing that out, it could happen any minute, at any stage of the trade, and at any time. So it is a challenge, and I think that's why everyone needs to work together in a way in collaborating.
And it does obviously depend on your risk appetite. They had chosen to engage in a high-risk activity. That was their risk appetite. They were obviously doing so lawfully, but you are sailing quite close to the wind. We've got other clients that kind of trade would be a complete no. So those are the risks you have to weigh up when you're choosing what to be involved with.
Yeah, and I think shipping quite often is about risk. You always hear about shipping magnates making their money during periods of high risk. So as you said, it is a risk appetite, and you need to see where you sit on it. High money, high gain, high risk. So, but thank you very much for that. Yeah, please, Deepak.
So, Kate, I heard your example. In this one, anyhow, I'm very sure.
Is it your vessel, Deepak? Is it your vessel she's talking about?
No. So, yeah, then just for the record, it was not my vessel.
Okay.
So, in this case, of course, the owners knew what they are doing. They chose to, act and go for Russian trade, of course. But we have seen cases where, the sanctions are now with, I don't know, they are so in a hurry to put sanctions on everyone, where cases have evolved where the vessel have just, just been in Iranian waters just to take bunkers, or maybe due to, some issues, the operational issues, the engine failures or something, vessel has to linger there for a bit, maybe a few hours. Even in those cases, we have seen authorities sanction the vessels way too quickly. And then the point here is, it's not about that they sanctioned it. The point is, once the vessel gets sanctioned, it's way too difficult for them to get charter or do any kind of activity. It's like an elephant sitting in your closet, right? So it has happened with us. So those are the cases which are way too difficult to deal. The owners are in terrible pain because of this. They have invested huge amounts of money, and once they are sanctioned, there is no going back. As she said, you can file a case and you can try to advocate, but there are so many cases that it's then the time frame to resolve is way too long.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like avoiding sanctions. Once you're sanctioned, you cannot get away from it. Oh, it's an uphill battle after that. So yeah, oh, thank you. Moving quickly on to Amsha. Amsha, can we talk to you about governance and inclusion? You're a lawyer, but you're also president of WISTA South Africa. You've been involved with Maritime SheEO. You champion hard. Is there a way we can get in more inclusion into governance and ESG? Tell us about that.
Thanks for that, Monica. Actually, I do want to acknowledge, it's just occurred to me, there are 3 current presidents of WISTA, India, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. And I don't know, Sanjam can correct me, are there 2 past presidents, as in Sanjam and Singapore? Yes. So I think that answers the question. We have come a long way with women and inclusion in shipping. But I want to share something that's anecdotal. It's my personal experience. So I've begun as an advocate 25 years ago, and I used to travel, as I mentioned, Cape to Cairo is the expertise that I have. So it's a lot of time in a plane, and in the early days, it was with my boss. And no offense to present company, but of course my boss was male and very pale. And when I traveled with him, I was very often mistaken for either his PA, and I don't have any secretarial skills, or worse still, his girlfriend. And now when I travel, it's different. The landscape has changed. So the story may have been one of challenges and struggle for how women are included in the sector. And Monica, for us, it's not just in shipping, but it's in law as well. The legal profession is time honored for being and notorious for being associated with men. So women in shipping and shipping law have 2 barriers to break. But now, as I've mentioned, we have 3 current presidents of WISTA and 2 immediate past presidents in this room. The conversation has certainly changed. And I think we must remember that when we include women, in shipping or in any sector for that matter, women bring diversity of thought. They bring diversity of perspective. And when many voices are heard or included in whatever the conversation or the narrative we're having, we will create innovation. When innovation is spurred on, economic growth follows very quickly. And I think we must also remember when we talk about inclusion in the sector and we talk about gender empowerment, it's very important to acknowledge that equality does not equate to equity. All the women in this room, we had different starting points. We began at different places based on our generations before us, based on wealth in our families, based on access to education. So it's important that the conversation of inclusivity recognizes that equality doesn't equate to equity. I think it's also very fitting, Monica, that we are in India, and I want to quote erstwhile lawyer and former Prime Minister of India, Sri Nehru, who said, "The status of a country can be judged by the condition of its women." I think it's really profound that we're having this discussion today, that we have the platform as Maritime SheEO and today AnchorCon to allow us the space to talk about this. And for me, it would be interesting. As I shared, 25 years ago, I was thought to be somebody's PA or girlfriend. Now I head up a legal function in a global multinational. We have a platform like SheEO. We have in the Secretary General of the IMO an absolute staunch supporter for our vision and mission for gender empowerment. The IMO is committed to the UN Sustainable Development Goal 5 on gender equality. So the conversation, the trajectory has changed, and we must recognize that. But having said that, there's still a lot of work to do. It's the gentlemen in the room, the gentlemen in our lives that continue to also support the conversation and assist with the trajectory. So we've made good strides, but I think sometimes women are their own barriers. Sometimes we think we can't do it all, and it is difficult to juggle. But ladies, I can tell you that there was no man 50 years ago who thought he couldn't do it all. So even if you think you can't do it all, just do it, and it will all fall into place. So there's a lot to celebrate. We've come a long way in shipping and in our legal profession, whichever jurisdiction we may practice in. But there's a lot of work to do, and we must do it ourselves. We must own our journey. We mustn't give people a choice when we go to them for support. You must get the support from whoever you seek it, male or female. And I think we must support each other, and that's why we have platforms like SheEO and WISTA, because they carry the women in their networks. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Amsha. I think that was really beautifully said, and we can see the change in the last decade or so. It's terrible to be able to say this, but we have at least seen the change. And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens because you and I sit and talk and you all support us. So that's why, we have, and it was really interesting because now being a member of WISTA is a KPI in a lot of companies. So someone actually said, he did a review and he said, my KPI for my junior was, have you joined WISTA? So I thought that was a beautiful thing to see.
That's excellent. That's absolutely excellent. I myself in South Africa have experienced the the local MD of one of the international shipping companies approached me to say, what are the benefits for me being a corporate member? There are women in Europe and the UK and Asia, so we wanna support WISTA South Africa. So you are now seeing male and female executives who realize the opportunity and the leverage inclusivity, diversity bring to their teams, and they want to encourage that.
Yeah, and I think we all learn when we are doing things. So that's it's nice to see so many men in the room. So that's really good. We have 1 minute left. So if I can go through 10 seconds of future proofing, is there anything we can do to future proof, and what? And then we'll wind down. So I'll start with you, Kate, and then come around.
So it is 10 seconds.
15.
15. From a sanctions perspective, very difficult. Obviously, have all your systems in place, sanctions compliance plans, etc. Basically, if the authorities ever come calling, rule of thumb is you want to be able to hold your head up and say, we did everything we reasonably could, that's the best you can do. So, but very difficult with legislation changing and even the courts interpreting things in ways you might not expect.
Okay. Have your systems in place and hope for the best. Deepak?
Yeah, so from a sanctions point of view, of course, you can't do much. So you do your KYC, keep your records, be ready.
Be
Apart
ready.
from that, then other regulation, I feel crew and crew welfare is something that we have to watch out for with the next decade.
Yeah, crew welfare. Okay. Chetan?
So since my fellow panelists have already covered sanctions, I'll not dive into that. But I would say that as far as terminal service providers are concerned, I think the cyber security and educating lawyers on technology and how to deal with technology and technological advancements. While we do have all the government initiatives like Sagarmala, like ULIP, but each of these, are, say, potential entry points for cyber threats.
Yeah.
Because all of our systems, including cranes, automated gates, logistics supply chain, it's all interlinked. So it's very important to know when and where to look out for, who to contact, where to record, where to kind of file your complaints, and that's how the investigation is done. So advancing, or can say from my side, educating lawyers on technological fluency would be the best, and
Okay.
the measure.
So future proof by educating lawyers. Okay. Amsha, saving the best for last.
I think since we're talking legal risk, future-proofing means spend some money on the lawyers and our teams. You've got to use the OPEX. Use it for legal tech. Get your lawyers trained and upskilled, data analytics, AI, machine learning. But having said all of that, I may want to say something controversial. In this fourth industrial revolution, whilst AI, machine learning, and tech is important and we invest in it and it is future skilling, master the art of communication. That is what will set you apart in this time. People place too much of reliance or dependence on the digital, on some system to do something for you. And what you put into the system and what you get out on the system, our minds have become lazy and our behavior has become complacent. We are not using critical thinking. So master the art of communication. You must be able to articulate what your brain has processed with what the legal tech has done for you.
Fabulous. I think, yes, be ready, use your brains. So fantastic. On that note, can we just say, as always, a big hand to our wonderful panel from lawyers to the terminal. Thank you very, very much.